Hello and welcome back to Handheld News Nuggets, the show where I talk about whatever the hell I want in the handheld scene. This is our second ever episode, and today we're going to pick up right where we left off last week, talking about the Retroid dual screen. That's the little device that attaches to the top of your other handheld, adds a 5.5-inch OLED. There was a problem initially with latency I reported on last week, and they have allegedly fixed it. And then the newest information, though, is that it doesn't work with the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. It works fine with the Retroid Pocket 5 and Mini. Just kidding, they fixed it. So in the time that I wrote the script for this episode, it didn't work, and then it did work, and now we are allegedly good to go. And the fix seems to be actually doing the rotation on the device itself instead of the hardware display. So it's not using like the buffer or firmware on the display to take a couple frames to rotate it. It happens on the actual Retroid device, which will reduce the latency. But however, this has caused issues with other Android devices because Android in general doesn't really have a vehicle for rotating your screen. I mean, it's got your gyroscope for the device itself and that screen, but actually changing a second screen output to be different isn't really something that's present in that OS. So for other devices, it's going to be really hit or miss. You're going to find that you're going to have something, maybe you've got your RG477M or your Odin 2 Mini and you want to attach it, and then you attach it, and then you've got this tiny little vertical screen displaying on the 16:9 display. And until updates come out for those devices or somebody figures out some sort of software workaround, it's not really going to work. It's going to work okay on a Windows handheld because in Windows you can set the display rotation in the settings, so that's not really an issue there. But yes, just beware that the other devices might not work okay. I don't know. Maybe they're not going to do the fix and there is going to be latency on that one. As far as I know, the other devices has not shipped yet. I do personally have one ordered and I have not seen any shipping notification. So still waiting on more information on that. But let's not get hung up on that and go ahead and move to our next nugget today. Okay, so our next topic hits home close to some of my personal friends in the handheld scene and is sort of the dangers of the IndieGoGo pre-order etc. type environment that we see a lot of these handhelds release in addition with the current tariff climate and sort of uncertainty about shipping partners and getting stuff into the country, etc. So this specific one centers around Ayaneo and the Pocket Ace. So it seems like there's been one specific shipment of the Retro Power Pocket Ace, I think is primarily what's on that order, that got shipped out over a month ago at this point. I think it was like July 30th, something like that. Very end of July, this shipment got sent out through their carrier. It was supposed to get rerouted, I think, through another country and then come into America, probably because they're trying to get around the tariffs. No comment on the legality of that. But however, that shipment has seemingly disappeared. There are several people that have not received their Ace. It's been over a month and there is no update on where it is. There are several angry comments over on the IGG campaign for the Pocket Ace about not getting it. Basically, people are saying, hey, where's my device? And Ayaneo is just replying and saying, oh, it got held up for customs inspection and it'll take some more days. They keep saying this takes some more days, next week, soon, etc., but nobody has received any updates. Allegedly, one of the people commented that they reached out to customs with the information that Ayaneo provided them, and that customs said they don't have them. So we don't know. I don't know if this is because Ayaneo tried to get around the system and they got caught and now they need to pay money for tariffs to the US or the shipping agencies. Maybe the shipment is lost and they're just not coughing up to it. I personally have a friend that has a device on this list, and yeah, they've been getting the runaround. I think personally this is some pretty unacceptable business practices. Like, I get that there are some things with the tariffs and the shipping that are kind of out of the hands of the companies, but the fact that it's been over a month, you can't get a better update than just it requires more days because of customs, and you have offered no resolution to your customers is pretty poor business. And it unfortunately kind of factored into me canceling my Pocket Ace order. It's not the only reason, but one of the reasons. And I'm actually about to cancel my Pocket S2 order, partly because of this, but also partly because of another news item that we're going to talk about at the end of the episode today. But I think I am going to cancel that just because there's so many devices coming out right now. And with this uncertainty with the tariffs and the shipping, and then Ayaneo specifically seeming to have more issues on some of their orders than others, it's kind of left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. So yeah, be that as it may, hopefully those people get their units and it really is just some customs hold up and they're going to get released soon. But it's been over a month and I still don't have more news on this. Will we see more of this with tariffs? De minimis exception, which is the US exception that allowed items under $800 to enter the country duty free to make it easier to get them in here and not have to worry about that, has been suspended. So it was suspended for China a few months back. I want to say it was like May, but now for all countries, it's suspended. So previously, these companies that were using these loopholes of sending it to Singapore or Korea or wherever first, and then over to the US, those may not work anymore. Those may still be subject to tariffs to those countries. So we may see a huge hit to the handheld scene with more tariffs showing up, or we may see them continue to get around it with questionable means to get the devices into the country. False declarations of value. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. Again, no legal advice on this channel here, but yes, it's a very uncertain time. So moving on to the next device, the next thing I want to talk about is the GPD Win 5, which is this ridiculous behemoth. It's kind of looks like a Win 4 in appearance overall, but it's inflated a little bit. It's now a 7-inch instead of a 6-inch handheld. They've ditched the slide-out keyboard mechanism and instead added a detachable battery pack. It's this big old huge honking thing on the back because this handset runs up to the AI 395 Max Ryzen, whatever chipset was 64 gigs of RAM. This thing's a beast. It's like RTX 4060 level of graphics performance in theory, but you're going to be sucking around, I don't know, over 100 watts of power to be able to do that, and a conventional battery is not going to be able to deliver that. They've even got like a little umbilical cord so you can put the battery in your pocket and use the handheld, which looks totally ridiculous. I feel like this is more of a tethered handheld than anything. But the biggest news this week about that is that they, I think, unintentionally leaked the price. There was a brief period where it was up on their website, and the price for the top spec 395 model with 64 gigs of RAM was an eye-watering $2,400. Now, this isn't totally surprising considering something like the ROG Z Flow 13 with the 395 chipset is in that similar price ballpark. You know, even the framework desktop is like $1,500 plus for that chipset, depending on how you configure it. And that doesn't include screens and other things and getting it into a handheld form factor. So it's just an expensive chip, but man, $2,400, I think I'm out. This is something that like it'd be fun to test, but I could never see myself buying this. Probably not even used just because it's just too expensive for what it does. Let me know what you think in the comments. And then lastly, the IndieGoGo preview page is now live. You can sign up to get notified about the GPD Win 5, and I'll put that link to the IGG down in the description there. For our second to last piece of news today, we are going to talk about the Legion Go 2, which is one of my personal biggest handhelds I'm looking forward to of this year so far, perhaps of all time. If you don't know me, you know that I love OLED and I love a bigger screen. Right now, I've got the One X-Fly F1 Pro, which is, you know, a pretty nice handheld. It's got an OLED screen, which is beautiful, but it is only 7 inches at the end of the day, which means it's just okay. I like it better than the ROG Ally or the Ally X. It is a bit more of a niche thing. I personally think it's the best 7-inch PC handheld that you can buy on the market right now. And that is my honest opinion. I paid my own money for this. I'm not sponsored by One X Play or anything like that. But I really love the original Legion Go with its 8.8-inch screen. And I also liked the Legion Go S, despite being a little less powerful. At least the Z2 Go model. Still had a lot of fun with that. But now we're going to get 8.8 inches and OLED, so kind of the best of both worlds there. And Lenovo is at IFA this week, and we are getting more details. We may even get a price and launch date within the next week, but right now, the details that have trickled out are this. It is confirmed 500 nits at a 1200p 144 hertz, and that is a native landscape OLED screen with VRR. That's a lot to kind of digest at once, but basically 500 nits is about the same as something like the ROG Ally X, I believe. So decent brightness. It's not going to win any awards outdoors. 1200p. We already knew that they were going to reduce the resolution from the original Legion Go. I think this is fine. We're still at about 250 ppi, which is right on the border of being too grainy for me, but I think it's going to be okay. When I saw it at CES in January, it looked pretty good. And that means that we also don't necessarily need as much graphics horsepower to push it, which is probably a smart choice on a handheld device. And 144 hertz means it's nice and smooth no matter what you do. You know, landscape means that you don't have any problems with games that don't run properly. In fact, I was just trying to play Dune Awakening on my F1 Pro the other day, and the graphics were all messed up and stretched out because the game just doesn't play nice with that portrait display screen. Now, most games, it's not a big issue, but I have run across a game here and there that does not like a portrait screen device. And then VRR, of course, means that it can change the refresh rate on the fly from, I think, starting at 30 hertz up to 144 hertz, so that you don't really notice frame pacing issues as much, or you don't see screen tearing. So that is really good to have on a handheld. You know, the ROG Ally has had that. I think the Claw has that, and it does help smooth things out. The Legion Go S also has that. The original Legion Go did not. So we're definitely seeing some upgrades in that space. The promotional materials say it's up to 32 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. Nothing too surprising there. We've kind of had that rumor that it's up to 32. Interesting that says up to, not sure if they're going to do multiple models. There's even one promo shot that somebody, I believe either on Reddit or Discord, spotted showing SteamOS UI on the screen, and I don't know if that's just a fluke because they copied and pasted that image, or if there's actually going to be a SteamOS version, which could be cool, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I feel like the Legion Go S is sort of like the Steam specific line, and I haven't heard any rumors otherwise, or I don't think there's been any tidbits in Valve, commits on GitHub or anything like that that suggest the Legion Go 2 is going to have launch support. But hey, I'm just going to throw it out there because that's what I saw. And then, of course, as far as the price, the rumored price at this point is over $1,000. I think I saw some rumors that said $1,050 or $1,100 for the handheld. Yes, that's expensive. Saw another comment that it said it would be $200 more expensive than the ROG Xbox Ally X, which I think is $900. So for $200 more than the Xbox Ally X, we're going to get the same chip. They're both going to have the Z2E. They're probably going to both have 32 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte of storage. So spec-wise, we're pretty on par. But you get the bigger screen and the OLED. And whether that is worth it to you, that just depends. Oh, and you also get the detachable controller, kind of Joy-Con style thing. And that is a pretty nice thing, tabletop usage, etc. Maybe use it as kind of like a Windows tablet. Those are use cases you can't really do with the ROG Ally. Personally, I love OLED in large screens so much that to me it's worth that $200. I'm probably going to sell half my collection to afford the Legion Go 2, as long as it doesn't disappoint. Something I'm really excited and looking forward to. And then finally, the biggest piece of news possibly of the last couple of weeks here, we talked about the Thor and the Pocket DS last week as two of the newest high-end Android dual screen kind of situations on the market, but we finally have information on the Odin 3, which I alluded to would be coming soon last week. And now we know it is, in fact, as I suspected, the 6-inch 1080p 120Hz OLED screen, same thing that is on the Thor, I would imagine. And we have found out that it's being powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite. So it is going to be more powerful than the Thor, but with a giant little asterisk or star at the top there, which is, as you may know or may not know, there is not necessarily custom driver support for the 8 Elite chipset, which isn't to say, the Qualcomm drivers are pretty good. So for Android gaming, it is 100% way more powerful. It is a real beast of a chip, and that is not an issue at all. And even some Winlator, the drivers there seem to be playing okay. But with Switch emulation specifically, and maybe a couple other niche emulators, there are those custom drivers which really help with the games running properly without glitches. So the problem, and I've tested this myself with the 8 Elite on my Red Magic Astra tablet, sometimes you're gonna get graphical glitches, flickers, weird stuff not loading, and there's just nothing you can do about it because of the driver compatibility. It might actually run at more FPS than a 8 Gen 2, but the 8 Gen 2 won't have all the graphical glitches, so it is a better option. So if Switch emulation is your big thing, and that's what you really want to use one of these new devices for, you're probably better off picking a high-spec Thor device, probably the Pro with the 12 gigabytes of RAM, and that will be enough to power through your Switch catalog, and you'll get custom driver support. The Odin 3 might not be the best choice specifically for Switch, now which, there are still some games that run, but you're going to run into some more compatibility issues. However, if you are Android gaming or game streaming, or really anything other than Switch emulation, the 8 Elite is going to be a way more powerful chip. Now, we don't know how much more expensive this is than the Thor. If it comes in at a similar price, then, it's a kind of apples and oranges decision there, but if it comes in more expensive, that makes it more complicated. One interesting thing is that they've added a new SKU for the first time. Typically, we had the base, Pro, and Max with the AYN products, but this time we are getting an Ultra SKU, which comes with a 24 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage, which is pretty huge. Previously we've seen a couple Ayaneo devices with this. I think the Evo had a 24 gig model option, but we haven't seen it from very many other manufacturers in the handheld space. So whether or not you need 24 gigabytes, probably not for most emulation. Catch is being, again, like Winlator, Game Hub. If you're going to try to do that stuff, then the 24 gigs could come in handy. Also future-proofing, although we don't know what the future of emulator development and driver development carries there. But this is definitely going to be one of the most powerful Android devices out there, probably period, because we've got phones, I've got the Astra tablet, which has this tiny little sealed fan on it that doesn't do a whole lot for it. The Odin 3 might be the first device with like true, beefy, robust, active cooling on the device. And I'm not talking a magnetic clip-on phone thing. We're talking real cooling to cool that chip. So this could be the most powerful Android device in existence when it releases. We will see. That is to be determined. They are also going to do full-sized sticks on this one. And when I say full-size, I mean bigger than the Odin 2 Portal. They shared a picture on their Discord of the Portal sticks and then the Odin 3 sticks, and they are larger. So this thing has almost no bezels. It's very short, but it's very long. It kind of almost looks like a phone with a controller with how wide it is, just because there is no room wasted on the top of the bottom. It's very narrow, and then just those little handles. So I think despite being a 6-inch, it's still going to be a pretty compact device. Yeah, so that's kind of it. The price is still unknown, but again, like with the GPD Win 5, the IndieGoGo preview page is now live. I'll put that link down in the description as well. You can sign up to get notified when that campaign goes live, and if you want to get your order in on that one. Kind of a little disappointed to see that they used IndieGoGo for the Odin 3 when they used their own site for the Thor. IndieGoGo is sort of a headache, and when you're a big company that's already sold lots of handhelds, I kind of feel like you should just be selling direct and not doing this crowdfunding BS. Kind of gives these companies an out. Like AYN and Ayaneo both have a history of delivering, other than Ayaneo's little shipment hiccup. But so it's not like I don't think they're going to deliver the product, but IGG just adds this whole level of middleman and complexity and potential inflexibility with refunds and stuff like that. Not saying the companies won't refund you, but technically you're not guaranteed anything with the crowdfunding campaign. So really wish they would just stick with ordering direct. I don't know why AYN goes back and forth between their site and the IndieGoGo. I think Retroid does kind of the same thing. Some products hit one, some the other. Either way, I don't know. And yeah, to my point earlier in the episode, I'm canceling my Pocket S2 because the Odin 3 is coming. Now, I wasn't even necessarily ordering the Pocket S2 to be my everyday handheld. I just kind of wanted to review it. But with only a couple hundred units sold, there is not going to be a lot of them out there, and I'm not sure how big the interest on that is. And then the Odin 3, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. All other things being equal, they're both 6-inch handhelds, and one of them has a 120 hertz OLED, and one of them has a 60 hertz LCD. I digress. It's a 6.3 inches on the Ayaneo, but I don't think that 0.3 inches is going to make a difference. I'd much rather have OLED. So yeah, Odin 3 looks to be the new flagship Android in the neighborhood. Let me know in the comments. Do you think that it's pretty cool and you're going to order it, or do you think that you're just jaded? Are you worried about tariffs? What happens if the Odin 3 comes out at $400 base, and then you have to pay another 30+% in tariffs on it, and now all of a sudden you have a $500 plus device plus shipping? We're getting really expensive. You go buy an Xbox Ally or a Legion Go or something like that instead, with more options. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy world right now. I'm actually going to be putting out some episodes in the coming weeks that are a throwback kind of retrospective, where I'm going to talk about some of the handhelds released over the last couple of years and why you can still play them and you don't got to buy the latest and greatest thing, especially in this uncertain economic times. But yeah, that's all I've got for today. As always, leave a comment down in the description if you want to give me feedback on any of these items, or if you've got any tips, information, extra news, etc., etc., etc. But yep, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, that silly YouTube stuff, and have an excellent day.